Streaming. It like changes all the time.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we are streaming him live. You can go ahead and start.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Vice Chair of Finance, and I would like to welcome everybody to the meeting today, our August 1st Affordable Housing Advisory Committee meeting. All committee members will be participating virtually, and we are now streaming live on the Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website, and also linked on the committee's webpage. We have the option for the public to listen and comment live by phone. Please dial 855-925-2801 and use meeting code 7663 to listen in. For those of you who are out there watching the stream live, welcome. Now I'd like to go through and introduce all the committee members and do a roll call. Everyone will be participating virtually. If you could, make sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And if you have a question, we'd like you to unmute your microphone, and if you can, use the little raise your hand function. If you're on your phone, you can mute your line by pressing *6 after you're done speaking. Committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. We'll start with Alvarez. He's not here. Oh, he is. It's here.
Good morning. Hello. Glad to be here. See all the smiling faces.
Welcome. Scott.
Morning, all.
Jane.
Good morning.
Chris Gay. Here. Paul Heathman.
Good morning.
Tara Kirby is not here. Rita Lee.
Actually, Tara's here.
Who is she?
Yeah, I saw Tara for sure.
Okay. Babs Phillips. Nope. All right, Louisa Smith.
And Wayne's here. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Stewart. See him on the line. Oh. Andy Barnett, I think, has joined us virtually from his car.
Morning, everybody. Thanks, Brian, for taking the first of the meeting until I got here.
No worries. And David Bartholomew.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning, David. And then Councilmember Mosley.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I think that's it. Our first order of business on our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from March and June. Sasha, can we do this in one motion to approve both, or do I have to do them one by one?
Oh, you can do both.
Did anyone have any changes, comments, or questions on either of the meeting minutes? If not, can I get a motion to approve both the minutes?
Motion to approve both the minutes.
I'll second.
Awesome. So I guess we just go through and do a roll call then, or do we just all say aye?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you have to do roll call when we do a virtual meeting.
Okay. All right, so Alvarez,
Yes.
Scott,
Aye.
Jane,
Hello.
Paul,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Rita, what's here, Babs, and Noena,
I approve.
Stewart, Andy,
Aye.
David?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So the motion carries. All right. So that's our approval of the meeting minutes done. Next thing up there is a bunch of updates. Sasha, you want to take this?
Absolutely, thank you. And would it be helpful if I shared the agenda on the screen for folks?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Let me do that really quickly. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so really quickly, we wanted to do some updates. Tony McDowell, the finance director, is going to be joining us at 10 o'clock exactly. So we can, just whatever we're doing, hopefully we can take a pause right then, but I think we can get through all these before that. Just wanted to let you all know that the affordable housing plan is in a second round of review at the city manager level, management level. That will be done by next Tuesday, and enterprise will review any changes that we have. I don't anticipate any major changes, just some slight tweaks. And then I can hear myself. There we go. And then they will do the graphic design of the plan. We're hoping by the end of August that we will have it all set and ready to release. So the release will be sometime either the end of August or the beginning of September. I fully hope that by your next meeting on September 5th, or if that's the date, then that it'll be ready. And that's where we're at with that. For CED, I have some notes here. I think I was going to let Nikki Reed do that, actually.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Nikki Reed here, Director of Community Economic Development. I just wanted to get some insight on other activities that are happening within our department that connect to our housing initiatives. And so we are poised to submit our annual action plan, which details the spending plan for both CDBG and home investments for the coming year. As you all know, the home program is a vehicle that is used to make affordable housing investments over a 4-county region. So basically 4 counties, Buncombe, Henderson, Transylvania, Madison, kind of collected together early on to allow for a block grant of those home funds to this area, kind of strengthen numbers. And so we work with the Home Consortium on those investments. One of our prioritized investments in this coming year is going to be for Apple Ridge, which is in Henderson County off Sugarloaf Road, I believe. And so just a great example of our regional collaboration that happens to help advance our housing goals. There is some additional funding that can be made available. We're going to wait until we hear the outcome of the tax credits for this fall and then make those investments. And so that's kind of future casting, right, to really understand how those home funds will be spent on projects that are seeking to kind of come together and fill their final gaps before they're ready to hit go. But I'm also excited to just be in the mix on some of the recent closings that we've had that are coming out of the home program. So I think everyone may know, but Fairhaven Summit, which is a project that was funded by City of Asheville Housing Trust Funds, as well as home funds, and I believe there was a land use incentive grant included in that. This is Commonwealth Development. That project has broken ground, so we're so excited to see. It takes a lot. I know our Housing Community Development Committee and Council, this committee, we see these projects come through for funding allocations, and so that's a really visible thing that we see, but I think it's also really exciting, and I want to kind of show support for our staff as they help these projects actually come to closing. We have a lot of work that's done through our legal department, as well as our staff team on getting those contracts in place, such that we can close on the projects and then really see those begin to take shape and get underway. So it's just really exciting. There's a lot of projects that are trying to come to that closing, that finish line here in the next several months. But I did want to highlight Fairhaven Summit and really hold that up as a project that has multiple sources of funding that is currently under construction. And so There were also a couple of habitat out of Hendersonville. So again, our home fund stretching into Henderson County. Dod Meadows has been a single-family project that Habitat of Henderson has worked on for years. So it was great to see 3 closings there on single-family. We also have some investments in Madison County that are coming to fruition for rural rehab programs. So just kind of wanted to take a minute to highlight that regional coordination that happens with our home program and just seeing how those investments are really starting to take shape. So that's really top of mind for me. I also wanted to just share, we are in the final phase of going through and selecting a vendor who will help with our consolidated plan. So consolidated plan is a 5-year plan to really guide those federal investments. It's interesting, it is coming on the heels of our affordable housing plan, and I think where we're headed is really starting to strategically understand the breadth and scope of our resources and how they could all pair and work together. So I'm super excited that we're going to be concluding the affordable housing plan. We have that great roadmap that shows what projects or what programs are bond eligible, what aren't. What I'm super excited about is hopefully in the near future, then we can also understand how CDBG can factor into those strategies and how home also plays a role there, and just really try to understand the full utility of our resources and how they can all work together. So in the final kind of stages of selecting that vendor to help us with our consolidated plan, and more to come on that. Last piece is I wanted to share some of the work that's happening with our continuum of care. So we do have some overlap with some members of AHAC that are also members of the continuum of care. That's been an effort that started really with the National Alliance and Homelessness Within Reach report that recommended that the continuum of care framework is really what we want to lean into to help meet the needs of people experiencing homelessness. So I'm super, super proud of that work that this community has done around supporting that effort and standing up the continuum of care. I want to acknowledge Brian Messman. He is currently chairing the funding committee, which is a subcommittee of the continuum of care, as we work through the federal funding resources that are available through continuum of care. That's ESG funding, and I'm blanking on the other one. Brian, you may have to save me here. So we're looking at those.
It's a COC, it's the COC grant that comes directly from HUD.
Thank you so much. And so we're looking at those investments and how they're going to be used in our community. And then we're also reviewing a proposal for the Ramada project. So again, this piece of the housing continuum really is around the permanent supportive housing opportunity at the Ramada property. So we're currently reviewing a proposal for the Ramada and hoping to make some recommendations to the COC board, which will ultimately make its way to City Council sometime in the coming weeks. So just wanted to shed some light on the work of the department. Our last piece here is our economic development group, really finding a lot of good momentum right now with our business inclusion office as they make some strides with community engagement and helping to advance equitable procurement across the city of Asheville investments. Working with our real estate team to hopefully get the Duke Energy downtown substation across the finish line. And our CALA program is wrapping up. So our City of Asheville Youth Leadership Academy, where we have we place high school students in meaningful internships across our community, that is wrapping up. And really, really, really wonderful work that's led by Promise Bozeman, where we're seeing our young people launch into excellent careers with that basis of support from Promise Bozeman. So just a quick insight into some of the other activities. Sasha, I can turn it back over to you or answer any questions. Go ahead, Andy.
Thanks for that update. It's really helpful to hear the breadth of what the community development team is working on. I had a couple of questions on the federal side. That's a piece of the housing puzzle, CDBG and home, that we don't really spend a lot of time on with AHAC, and it's really an important part of the puzzle. So my first question on that is just can you give the committee a sense of the scope of investment that comes to our region from those programs? I mean, it doesn't have to be down to the penny, but what's the order of magnitude of federal housing and community development funds that we're working with?
Absolutely. So pretty much every year, it's about $1 million in community development block grant funds that come into the city. We're an entitlement community, so because of our population, we actually receive a block grant every year from the federal government for community development investments within the city limits, generally to support low, moderate income people. And so that support, in fact, I'm going to just name off some really, really quick investments that we're seeking to make this year. So, for example, with that CDBG money this year, we're dedicating funds to HelpMate. They help fund staff with those CDBG funds at HelpMate. On-Track Financial Counseling, they do homeowner readiness, the financial counseling at On-Track, so the CDBG funds are used there. We also fund Mountain Biz, so Mountain Biz Works. They do expanding access to small business, and they do coaching and capital for low-income entrepreneurs. And so you're seeing that Fiscal Legal is also one of our funded partners through CDBG this year. That's just a quick summary, highlights of how those funds then support the ongoing work of our strong nonprofit partners to ultimately benefit people of low, moderate income. So that's CDBG. And then as I mentioned,
we fund a lot of home repair out of CDBG as well, right, within the city of Asheville?
Yes, we do, and so we don't have it up for this year, but in years past we have funded home repair out of CDBG. Thank you for highlighting that, Andy. That's what's interesting is maybe I could do some work and really come back to the committee and share, really how we use CDBG to support housing in general. I know there's just a lot of conversation around anti-displacement, and that's something that I am actively researching. Is just to better have a ability to share out, what investments are currently in the pipeline that also support anti-displacement. And so, to your point, homeowner repair funded by CDBG over the years has been one to highlight. And then, with respect to homes, so just quickly, we receive about $1 million in home funds every year that really serve as gap funding for multifamily new construction. It's also used for tenant-based rental assistance, and so that is something that we'll partner with groups like Homeward Bound, HelpMate, to do rental assistance for people experiencing homelessness. We've also used that for down payment assistance programs. We've funded MHO in the past for down payment assistance, and again, we've funded habitat activities across at least Henderson County, Buncombe County to support home ownership, and that's with our Madison County investments. That's with the Community Housing Coalition of Madison County, and so they're a newer nonprofit. They've been around for the past several years, but really getting their feet under them in terms of being able to handle those federal funds, being able to make those investments, and really help with the rural rehabilitation in Madison County. So thanks for giving the opportunity, and it's been a great insight to really understand the full depth and breadth that these federal funds could support in our community.
Two more questions, if I can, on the federal side, and then I see Wayne has some too. But you guys had some staff turnover recently on the federal side of the CD team. What's the status on filling that? And then the other question, I think I understand that there are some rule changes. There's a comment period for proposed rule changes at the federal level to the home program, and is that something that you guys are tracking? And are there things that it would be helpful for AHAC to look at to make recommendations about comments that the city might want to make in the rules process at the federal level?
That's a great question. I may need to come back to you on those changes. And so let me just jot that down so that I can come back to the committee with any updated information about those changes. I will say that, yes, we have had turnover. The position was posted and closed. I've been part of interviews, so I'm hoping to make an announcement very soon about that, so trust that that is well underway. I am actually serving as your community development division manager right now, so but really, again, it's opened my eyes to just how much opportunity there is within this program and how it does support the work of our community year over year. It's a great program, and so yeah, hoping to see that position filled as soon as possible.
Great, thanks. And then I think Elena had a question.
Good morning. My question is just with the nonprofits that we support, how are we making sure that these nonprofits are using equitable models and serving those historically marginalized populations in our community? Are we collecting data? I just want to see how we're going to reach out to the community for those who are most impacted.
I'll share that I am, as I learn more about these HUD programs, I'm very much, I guess impressed is the word. I mean, there's a host of data collection that the federal government requires that we procure every year regarding outcomes and those who are benefiting from the investments that are made through these federal programs. And so I do think that their data collection methods, we perform what's called a CAPER, C-A-P-E-R, every year, where we receive the outcomes and the populations served from the investments that we've made, and we compile that and we submit that to the federal government for our reporting. And so we're in the midst of that right now. In fact, we're working on finalizing the forms and the information that we need to receive, but that is well documented, and that's well documented year over year over year, and we make those reports available to HUD. So it sounds like there might be some interest of this committee just to see that, just to have more visibility on that, so that we can, again, there might be lessons learned which we can take to our other programs, because I know, I think about the Cease the Harm audit that was recently completed, where it was cited that data is of extreme importance with understanding equitable investment. And I know Sasha and I have been talking about our work plans for the next 6 months, 12 months, and really trying to think through how data and what kind of data that we need to really help understand who we're serving and how those investments are successful. And so I am happy to report that, yes, the federal reporting requires that we do really well with the procurement of outcomes. So why don't I do this? I jotted down home rules and comments, and then why don't I give an update on data with respect to the CDBG and home program at y'all's next meeting. I can follow up on that.
And Nikki, I just wanted to make sure that we follow up. I know that there's reporting, but I want to make sure the numbers match up, because I know that people like to play with numbers around here too. So I just want to make sure that the nonprofits that we are supporting are really providing services to those historically marginalized communities, because it's not really happening in some of these nonprofits.
Are we ready
Great.
to move?
So, thanks.
Go ahead.
I was moving on unless you had more, Nikki. Elena, thanks for those comments, and that is important, and I think it will be helpful for us to take a look at the data that we have at the federal level, and it's really the value, one of the values of having this advisory committee is the chance to, sort of kind of ground check data and reporting against the real lived experience of people in our communities, and make sure that those things, those things feel that being reported feels true on the ground, and make sure that we're not that we're connecting the dots if that's not the case. So thanks for bringing that up. Sasha, did you have more that you wanted to share? I'd love to hear either now if there's a few examples, or maybe at our next meeting, what a status update on some of the Housing Trust Fund and Louise projects that we've discussed and have been approved in previous rounds of applications. I know there's generally a lag between when we are looking at like let's say, the housing trust fund policy revisions that we've made the last couple of years, and what projects are awarded, and then when projects actually get out of the ground and become homes for people. But I'd love it if you've got any, success stories that you can share about projects that are coming out of the ground or are getting close to their contract closings on those the funds that we award locally.
I mean, I could talk really informally very quickly. I didn't prepare a formal list. I can say, Nikki already talked about Fairhaven Summit, Haywood Street, Community Development has their project over on West Haywood Street under construction, and had that groundbreaking back in, I believe in March, ground blessing, excuse me. And then, we are close to closing on Laurelwood Apartments in Shiloh. Also, it just slipped out of my mind. Star Point Apartments is they're closing in on their zoning permit, and so some projects are ready to go faster than others. So Star Point, I think, will be maybe closing in the next 2-3 months. There is one project, Redwood Commons, that had to go through a whole brownfields agreement with the state, which really pushed them back. And so we were all waiting on that to get done before we could move forward. So, but we are in touch with those folks. So I can definitely prepare a more formal list for your next meeting. And I do know.
Yeah, I think that would be great. It's helpful to see those things, and I'm gonna channel my former co-chair and just ask if there's any movement on Team Biltmore project and how that's going.
We're in touch with them. I need to get back with them. They are kind of doing some value engineering, basically. The costs have gone up, but they're still their eyes on the prize of the same number of units and the subsidy that they have. So we continue to work with them on that.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Sasha? Or Nikki or the CD team?
Seth, you want to join an update on the zoning changes?
I would actually if it's okay with you all, let Tony McDowell present, and then I'd be happy to do that afterwards. That's okay.
Yeah, and Brian, this was a miss on my part in making the agenda with Sasha before it went out. We're actually going to hold off on that zoning change update until a subsequent meeting when they're just sort of at a kind of midpoint in this process, and there's it would be difficult to give a substantive update. So we'll let Scott off the hook on that and take that topic up at a future meeting.
I have a tiny update I can give, but it won't be substantive,
Okay.
I can't say, but we'll let Tony go first.
Yeah, let's jump in with Tony while in respect of his time.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Tony McDowell. I'm the city's finance director. I don't think I've met a number of you all, but good morning and good to meet you all. Good to see you. Sasha, is it okay if I display my screen? I was just going to start by running through some of the slides that we showed City Council at their meeting last week as kind of a way to, as a way to kind of tee up the discussion about the bonds, because I know you all want to learn some more about kind of where we are in the process and maybe ask some questions. So, these are some slides that we presented to City Council last week. I won't run through all of them, but the action they took on July 23rd was the final of 3 actions that officially puts a GEO bond referendum on the November ballot. They had a public hearing on July 23rd. I think there were 3 people who spoke at that public hearing, all spoke in favor of the GEO bonds. So moving forward, there's been a lot of work up until this point by city staff, primarily in the finance department and capital projects, kind of developing the program, doing the financial analysis, getting an idea of some of the potential projects that we may be able to do with this money. And now we kind of shift into a different role moving forward. So between now and the election in November, city staff will be in a role of providing information about the bond categories and the possible projects within each category. In fact, state law actually specifically prohibits city staff or elected officials from advocating for the bond referendum. And what that language specifically says is that no public funds can be used to pay for advocacy around the bond, such as yard signs for billboards and that kind of thing. And so staff is in the process, I think, are close to wrapping up getting the chamber on board to assist with some bond advocacy for us. And then there's some other groups as well in the community that are going to be assisting as well. So I'll go on. I'll skip over that next slide. Or you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, Tony, and this may be a question more for legal or boards and commission folks to help us weigh in on, but the prohibition around being involved in advocacy on the bond campaign, does that extend to appointed boards and commissions like ours, or are we free either as a body or as individuals for being involved in advocating for the bond?
Yeah, and so it's my understanding that you all are elected officials or city staff, and so I think you all are definitely free to be involved in whatever way you would like.
Thanks for that clarification. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. And yeah, you all please stop me if you have any questions. So just kind of a timeline of where we go from here. So again, that July meeting last week was the final action by City Council. The vote will occur on November 5th. If the referenda pass, and there's 4 of them, and they are voted on individually, so there's a possibility that 3 could pass and 1 would fail, or so on. So whatever does pass, on December 10th, we will go back to City Council. They have to adopt a resolution certifying the results of the election. We then have to go to the Local Government Commission. That's what LGC stands for. That's a state-level body that also has to approve the bond. And so we will try to get on their agenda for either January or February. And then once that's done, we will take a budget amendment to City Council to officially adopt the budget for the bonds. And then staff can begin spending money on the projects. And then there's going to be a tax rate adjustment that's going to be necessary to pay the debt service on the bonds. And I'll show you all that in a couple of slides. So City Council will be talking about that tax rate adjustment during the budget process next year, and then ultimately adopting a tax rate in June of 2025 that reflects the debt service on the bonds. So just kind of moving forward, so there's 4 what we call bond orders, or 4 categories that folks will be voting on in November. And like I said, they'll be voting on each of these individually. There's $20 million for affordable housing, $20 million for transportation, 20 for Parks and Rec, and 20 for public safety. We made it easy on folks this time. We did everything same number across the board. You all may remember the last time we did a bond referendum was 2016, and that was a $74 million bond referendum. It included 3 categories. The new category that we added this time was public safety, and that is specifically public safety facilities. So work on fire stations, joint public safety facilities, and those kinds of things. So, and this is a slide where I might even ask for Sasha and Nikki to weigh in as well. So what we tried to do with, at the council meeting for each of those categories was to give council some examples. And so again, these are not specific projects or specific allocations at this point, but some examples of how we might utilize the money from the bonds if it passes in November. And so this was some examples that we showed them for affordable housing. I won't run through all these bullets. I don't know if Sasha and Nikki, if there's anything you all want to highlight from this slide.
I don't think so. I mean, I think in the last 2 years, we've seen really good uptake through the Housing Trust Fund. So we've, used $11 million directly to the Housing Trust Fund, and definitely had plenty of applications because there was, we've approved and allocated more money to projects than that 11 million in the last 2 years. So there was some money in the housing trust fund before that, and we had a few previous projects kind of return the money, in a way, and so we've definitely allocated more than 11 million to the housing trust fund. So that is kind of a tried and true tool. I think we don't have anything definite to say. We have been discussing looking at it as a yearly process, right? So this year, if it was 5 million a year, and it doesn't necessarily all go into the housing trust fund. I think this bullet list is a really good list of possible projects. Maybe you all know this, and maybe I didn't hear Tony say this, but the bond has to go to capital expenditures. So it can't go to like rental assistance, and it can't go to homeowner education, those kind of softer things. So there are limits on that. And I know we've discussed that before with the plan strategy. So that's something we have to always keep a very close eye on, and how we're spending that money.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Tasha. Okay, so I'm going to scroll on through. Again, this presentation's out on our website. I'm not going to run through the other areas. If y'all have questions, happy to talk about them. But we'll stop here on the tax rating increase, potential estimated property tax impact. And we won't know the final numbers around this until next year. But right now we are anticipating that if all four of the bond referendum passed at the $80 million, that would require roughly a 2.6 cent increase on property tax rate next year. We're getting ready to go through a revaluation here in Buncombe County, so everybody's going to get new property values, and probably I think those get mailed out in January. So what we tried to do was we tried to estimate what how those values are going to go up. Currently, the average residential property value in the city is about $350,000. We assumed with revaluation it's going to go up roughly 20%. Again, we won't know those numbers until the county finalizes that information here in the next few months. But if that's the case, and you apply a 2.6 cent tax rate increase to that, then the average residential taxpayer would see their bill go up about $110 as a result of the bond packages. And again, that's if all four bond packages pass. So I'll skip through this one, and again, kind of back to that next steps. Yeah, go ahead. I see a question.
Yeah, I want to stay on the property tax impact just for a second, because I feel like this is a place where the affordability question sort of cuts both ways. I'm interested in, as you've been modeling and forecasting for the city, the finances around the bond. I mean, obviously, $110 increase in tax, property tax could be a real burden for low-wage property owners with low fixed incomes. There's certainly benefit from affordable housing in having an additional resource pool to create housing supply, or expand housing supply. But then you've got, how do we make sure that we're not making existing housing less affordable with the tax impact here? And are there things that we can do, either at the local level or through advocacy at the state level, to insulate some of our lower income neighbors from a tax increase related to the bond process?
Yeah, great question, and that's definitely one of the challenges we face as local governments here in North Carolina. Is anytime we want to essentially do anything like a bond program or expand any of our services, really it's the property tax is the only thing that City Council can control and can change to raise additional funding. So that's part of the challenge of the financial structure for local governments in North Carolina that we all kind of deal with. So there aren't any easy answers, I would say. We are changes at the state level, changes that are unlikely to occur, I would say, in the current kind of political environment here in North Carolina. I will point out there is a program that was started, I think it was 3 years ago, that Buncombe County runs. I see you nodding. You all may be aware of I can't remember the official title for it, but it's essentially it's a grant program to low-income homeowners, and the county runs that program. The city does contribute to it, so anyone who lives in the city who qualifies from the program, I believe the amount is $200 right now that the city will provide those individuals toward their property tax bill. Again, that was a program put in place a few years ago. The county runs that program. That might be a potential area where discussions could be had about expanding the program. And by expanding, I say maybe increasing the amount that the city and county contribute to the program. I think the requirements, the income requirements are probably not going to change. And I can't remember exactly what those are in terms of what someone's what their median income would have to be compared to the area median income to qualify. But that might be one potential area where locally we could look at doing something to offset the property tax burden.
Yeah, that seems like a really, that seems like a really important avenue to explore as we're, beginning to take this out to voters. It would, I can imagine looking at thinking about the slide that you shared with the possible uses of the bond funds. If we can replace some local dollars with bond dollars for bond eligible activities, can we free up some local dollars then to again create some insulation for long-time low-income property owners? I mean, and presumably tenants, landlords are going to pass along that property tax increase in the form of rent increases. So to create some insulation for those folks as we're doing this, it sounds like that's something you're thinking about. Is there an active is someone tasked with exploring that strategy and kind of putting programs together around that, doing the financial forecasting?
So not from the finance department that I'm aware of. I think probably where we would look at this again, we'll be starting our budget process up, in the next 6 months or so. So as we go through the budget process, I anticipate City Council will, much like you have a couple questions about are there ways that we can offset this potential property tax increase for folks. And I think at that point it'll be, we can, between Sasha and Nikki and their team and finance, we can talk about ways that we might be able to do that. So, but nothing actively going on right now that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sasha or Tony, can you all speak briefly to the third bullet item and the example items of the potential assistance for small or new developers?
Sure, I can talk to that. I think it's something we've been hearing about for a couple of years now, and it is in our it is in the housing plan, the affordable housing plan. So the pre-development activities for smaller emerging, so there are some, I have found some programs like that in other cities. I need to go back and find those again. Sometimes, those tend to be grants, usually, I think. So that can be a barrier, right? So for somebody who's identified a property, they've got an idea, and hopefully they're partnering with experienced builder. Like, so Haywood Street would be a great example of this. So the city, directly from the bonds, we can grant for capital costs, right? So some pre-development activities are bond eligible and some are not. But with the Haywood Street Community Development Project, the bond did directly grant some funds for pre-development in that project. So that allowed that project really to overcome some barriers. I think, so we're looking at new developers, BIPOC developers, folks who are traditionally not, don't have access to capital, let's put it that way. And so it doesn't mean that developer will forever get those funds, right? But
And I'll just share that one of our affordable housing plan strategies that we had designated in the medium implementation timeline specifically says to build the capacity of local nonprofit developers, including BIPOC developers. And so that's, again, this is just the opportunity that we have with bond funds to help actualize that strategy, is to assist through the pre-development. And what Sasha and I are reflecting on is, we piloted this to some extent in the 2016 bond with Haywood Street. And so we saw that, again, wanting to build a robust ecosystem of housing providers, affordable housing providers in our community, often means helping them to start, because as we know, that capital to start and to become a developer is something where there's a gap. And so that's a little bit more detailed to share.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, just kind of, I'll come back to the next steps slide. Again, just a reminder that, we're pivoting from a lot of internal, financial driven analysis to really kind of an outward facing information campaign and communication campaign that's going to happen over the next few months. That's going to be led by the city manager's office, our community and public engagement team, finance management services, my department. It's a smaller role, but we'll be involved in providing information as needed. So again, kind of back to the key takeaways. I won't go through these again. But yeah, happy to answer any questions you all might have about the bond. And if not, thanks for allowing me to come and share some information with y'all.
I have one quick question around that communication plan that you were talking about, and again, this may need to go directly to the CASE team before to Sasha and Nikki, but this committee has probably been more in touch with what happened with the bond funds from the 2016 bond referendum than anyone else in the community, and I will personally admit to that I struggle to remember all of the different outcomes that we had from those funds. I'm wondering if part of what the CASE team can work on is a fact sheet or infographic or something that would be really easy for me and others in the community to remember how successful our bond program can be.
Yes, and we're working on
Or
that.
does that cross the line and turn into advocacy?
No,
I don't want to get y'all in trouble.
Andy, we're actually working on that right now, and we're we're working closely with Kate and the city manager's office, and so and our piece is like education around what happened with 2016, and that's not advocacy for 2024, right? So we are working on that, and I think in the next few weeks we will be coming out with some more detailed information, and we actually will be talking with HCD about that on August 20th.
Great. Are there other questions from the committee for Tony? I'm not hearing any. So, Tony, thank you so much for your time and the work that you've put into this. Committee members will remember that this was one of our policy recommendations back in January following our retreat work session, encouraging council to pursue general obligation bonds for housing. So it's great to see the progress that we've made and the recommendations. And so thanks for all your hard work to make that a reality.
Yeah, thank you all.
Okay. Anything else before we shift gears on to the rest of our topic? I do think before we leave bonds, not today, but I think it would be great at our September meeting for us to consider a formal recommendation in support of the of bonds. And again, given that we have a platform to be able to advocate in favor of them, I'd love for folks to spend a little bit more time thinking about, sort of the balance, between affordability for existing property owners versus the potential for this $20 million to really help us with our supply challenges. But I'd love to see us have a good discussion about that and then see if we can form a recommendation as a committee in advance of the referendum. So if there's nothing else, I want to pick back up on the where we stand in our work plan as a committee and see if we can get kind of get tightened back up on that. I will admit to a little bit of, late summer slothfulness, and we've devoted our last several committee meetings to working with the team from Enterprise on the housing plan that I hadn't really given our work plan a look in a while. So pulling that back up in preparation for this meeting, I just wanted to kind of get us regrounded into the things that we said we were going to work on this year. There are a couple of things that we were targeting to do some work around this year. One of them was Luigi policy revisions. We got some information from the consultants at Enterprise around that program and its impacts, but I think right now with the other work that we could potentially be doing around the bond, around the housing plan strategies, and around the anti-displacement strategies that have come out through the missing middle study and the cease the harm audit, I really think, kind of the Luigi piece is maybe something that we want to table on our work plan. The same with the city-owned land disposition strategy. HCD had asked us to make some recommendations around that earlier in this year, and it feels like that is not as urgent a topic as some of these other things, and so I'm going to suggest that we press pause on those parts of our work plan, and that we talk about some of these more time-sensitive things. So that's one piece of just kind of updating where we are in our work plan as a committee. The other thing that I had totally forgotten that was on our work plan is a discussion that we had about providing input, making recommendations about any comments that the city wanted to make to the State Housing Finance Agency on their QAP, the Qualified Allocation Plan, I think is the right acronym. This is the plan that they have in place to base the awards of low-income housing tax credit, LIHTC funds to, and I also think their bond program to potential developments. And so we face some unique challenges in Western North Carolina due to topography and other things around scoring as highly as other parts of the state in the QAP. So we had discussed that. It feels like if we're going to take that up, I think the comment period of that opens later this fall. If we're going to take that up, that feels like something that we really need to kind of put a working group together around for a very short period of time to work with developers to really understand what the scoring criteria is, what makes it hard for them to score as highly as they would like to, and then formulate a recommendation around public comment to the QAP. So that was a piece that we had talked about, and I had completely, honestly, and everything else we've gotten into, forgotten that we said we were going to do that. So the final piece of what we were going to work on, and this is the thing that I think is the most important for us to take up, is the launch of the affordable housing plan, and then how we start taking some real actionable steps on some of the key elements of the plan. And I know the framework that we set up about a year or so ago to really get our marching orders from HCD. I know they're looking at their their work plan, at their coming meeting. So we definitely want to get our work plan in sync with what they're working on. But I think what's really critical right now feels like the work that can be done through the bonds, and also what we can do with other local dollars to make sure the bond funds are spent well. That we're leveraging that capital, the capital funds that we have through the bonds with the other kinds of programs that are going to make that work well, whether it's supporting development or creating additional affordability through property tax grants to low-income households. So figuring out some of those pieces really feel like the core pieces of work. So I'm going to stop rambling and let y'all weigh in, but I think what all of this is leading me to is kind of reestablishing some of our working groups around these really time-sensitive topics that need to happen between now and the end of the calendar year, and then we can regroup sort of beyond that with another work session and map things out long-term. So Sasha's got her hand raised. I'm going to let her jump in, and looks like Jane does as well. So let's get this party started.
Thanks, Andy.
Sasha?
Thanks, Andy. I just wanted to kind of chime in here really quickly before you all start talking. I think staff has identified this centralized wait list. We've, got a partner in Thrive Asheville that they have some time to spend on this and work with some members of AHAC. If AHAC is willing to form a work group around that. We think that it could really help us with part of our data collection and figuring out who is impacted by our programs. It could also help us. We get calls or emails every week from folks looking for affordable housing, and it just kind of has catalyzed this possible really helpful thing, like when we have projects that council has allocated funding to, and if we're having those developers or a land use incentive grant, that we're kind of directing them right to this wait list, and we can help prioritize who's getting that housing and making sure it's going to people who are already here, and there's all kinds of benefits we think of this. There's lots of questions. All of these topics have lots of questions, and that's why we really need your help. We do not have the staff or staff time to really do all that work, and so in a way, kind of like what the COC has been doing with certain ideas, is really kind of, and Andy kind of laid it out really well here in the agenda, like to research, talk with stakeholders, maybe you've got outside members on these working groups, and then making recommendations to HPD. We are taking these ideas to HPD to kind of get their blessing. Really, this group, there's that relationship there, and we want to make sure that HPD is also on board on these ideas. And home repair, we think is a really good anti-displacement strategy, and we do already fund it through CDBG, but we do have an opportunity, if the bond gets passed, to fund it even more. I think different agencies have different views about that, but we do know at least one agency said to us, yes, please, if you can fund more, we can do more. So I'll stop there. I think the grants fund, from staff's point of view, is a little bit, we need to obviously know if the bond is going to pass. So a lot of these things kind of depend on the bond passing. In my mind, it's like the second tier priority, if you, depending on how much energy there is. But this idea around the grant fund has to be somewhat narrowly tailored. It's not wide open. We can't just grant things hither and yon. So just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Sasha. Jane?
I just wanted to clarify for the two items that you had said we're going to pause on, the Louise policy revision and the city-owned property work. Will we come back to those potentially later in our work plan, or just pause them for the remainder of the year?
That's a great question, and I'm not sure that I know the answer to it. I think we're going to, I think that's a question that I want to run by HCD, and, I'm getting a sense that their priorities for us is going to be working on these things that are, feel really actionable around, like, the groundwork that needs to be laid for successful implementation of, of bond funds or, some early wins around the housing plan. That's a great question, and I'll try to get real clarity from them at their next meeting about when those things come back up. But they're both very, to get back to what Sasha was saying, a lot of questions around Louise with who's benefiting from those funds, and right now, action to, and so if we could, if the getting that's a lot. Seems to have some legs in the community right now. If that could also serve as the way that we gained a sense of who's who's being housed by the projects that we're the city incentivizing, then maybe the big question of each, and so, instead of the sort of like vague policy changes that we've written into Luigi and HDF around like, developers should make best effort to lease to, voucher holders or, other, hard to house populations, those things. If we can give them a real actual strategy that, could then almost become a requirement, hey, lease up from this list for your affordable units, then we have a little bit more of a container to get around that. So, and that's kind of why we're putting that conversation ahead of the policy, because we think we can write a stronger policy if we have some different tools in place. And Jane, you go ahead.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Just wanted to also raise my hand. I'm happy to either help with the centralized wait list or the recommendations for the QAP. Happy to take a lead more on one and then participate more in the other.
Perfect. That's perfect.
If it's okay, this could wait, but I'm just going to say it. So I think at the next HCD meeting, I don't know if we'll get into the full work plan or not, but we were thinking that regardless, it might be helpful, if folks started meeting before their September meeting and kind of could help us, and I'm getting ahead of myself, I'm sorry, but develop benchmarks or a timeline or how would AHAC and staff together, or partners together, how do we see those recommendations coming to HCD? What can they expect in terms of, is it January? Is it, one in this month and one in another? And what does it take to get to that kind of recommendation? So I'll just stop there. Sorry.
Yeah, and the timing I think is going to take a little bit more, legwork, but I think the form of the recommendation, it feels like what we have done around the, recommended changes to housing trust fund is maybe a good model of what those recommendations could look like, where we did some research, we did, with other local examples in other communities, we did some stakeholder engagement, and then we came back with, here's a set of recommendations around this that then you guys were able to, or that we were able to share up the line to HCD and eventually get approved. So that's what I would hope the sort of, the final product of these new working groups would be, is a series of, some research, some, and convening, and then a final document with a set of recommendations that could come out of the working group, be discussed by AHAC at a meeting, voted on, and then advanced. So that's sort of, I think, best case scenario, we're probably talking, 3 to 6 month process, and certainly longer on some of these more difficult things. I like Sasha's idea about, kind of digging into the home repair question because it is it's an anti-displacement strategy that we already have local capacity around. The city's already funding it in certain ways. It's potentially, bond fundable. It's one of the few, like, anti-displacement strategies that really feels like it could be funded directly out of the bonds rather than out of a new source of funding. So I think it's a great way to start thinking about and talking about housing stabilization or anti-displacement, two sides of the same coin. But I'd love to see that not stop with that one strategy. I think we really need a place where we can begin to, with this committee, we can really dig into, there's so much. We've had so many policy examples that have come out of, again, the Cease the Harm study and the anti-gentrification study that was part of the missing middle, that I really think we need to dig into those things deeply and understand what kind of resources it would take to get them done. But I think starting with home repair so that we can, we can show some early wins would be helpful for the working group to feel like they were getting traction, and also for the, this whole process of the plan and implementation to feel like it was going somewhere. What are others thinking about? Anybody Jane, I appreciate you stepping up on to tackle some leadership in one of these working groups. Brian and I had talked about him stepping up around that application waitlist project. So any others? And Brian, I see your hand raised, so maybe I'm stealing your thunder. So.
I was just about to say that I am very enthusiastic about that centralized wait list, and I think it's a key cog to make a lot of these other strategies work. And we've got, as Sasha was saying a moment ago, we've got some nonprofit partners in the area who are prepared to step up and help, and I think it just needs a little energy and work to get the details finalized so that we can put something before council that they can actually approve and fund. So I would be very enthusiastic about working on that.
Great. So I'd love to hear from the rest of the committee. Sort of, does this not sound like the direction to go with the remainder of our, kind of calendar year work tasks, or do you see something very, really different being valuable? Do you, like Jane and Brian, want to step up and volunteer some leadership? And I see Nuena's hand, so I'm going to let her jump in. Nuena?
Andy, I'm really excited about what you suggested to the group today. I do agree with the pauses and the focuses of, dealing with the seek the harm, the anti-gentrification, all those other bonds, everything else you said. I agree. However I could assist, I will do that. I'm excited. I think that we could do something really great in our community, and I am happy for your leadership.
Great, thank you. Others? Any other discussion?
This is Tara. I too agree with the direction, and I think that in an effort to, be most efficient and effective with our time and our energy, the things that we table are tabled, and then we move forward with the initiatives that were recommended.
Great, thanks, Tara. Paul Heathman, you've been uncharacteristically quiet this meeting. What's going on, my friend?
Oh yeah, I agree. I think we want to do it all. We want to do it all, but we can't do it all. So yeah, we need to stay focused. I'm a little disappointed. I mean, I think some of the policy work stuff would be important, but yeah, I appreciate everyone's work on it, and I'd love to be able to pop up and say that I can, join and help lead one of the teams here, but I have a bandwidth issue as well that I'm aware of, so I want to participate and support where I can, but I can't take a leadership position.
Yeah, and we all cycle through those times, so thank you for your, thanks for letting us know that as well. Other folks that, I can't see everybody who's on the meeting, so, because I'm doing this from my phone, and I thank you for giving me the space to be on here with you, even though I'm, kind of not in optimal settings, but other folks,
And Andy,
David or,
I was gonna say, it might be helpful if you're interested in participating and you don't have a ton of bandwidth, if there's one of these particular things you're interested in participating, to just say it, so then whoever does lead it knows who to reach out to.
Hey Andy, this is David. Yeah, I agree that that's a lot, both of those focuses, and I do think checking in with HCD to see what's on their work plan. Sounds like that might not be the next meeting, but the one after, before we reset the annual work plan and the ones for 2025. I'm willing to serve on one of these committees. I'd prefer not to chair it, but I'm happy to be involved. I think trying to get easy wins and make sure that the community is heard from as the city implements the affordable housing plan is really important. And so I'm happy to help out if you need me on that committee or a working group or whatever it ends up being called.
okay, great. All right, well, I really appreciate everybody's energy around this, and we can, I'll have some follow-up communication with folks who have indicated they might have the bandwidth to provide leadership on these things, and then we'll start thinking about, who they want to tap for the various working groups. But I would also say, one of the things that the working groups give us the flexibility to do is think about who from beyond the committee is a community expert in this, either because they have technical experience or they have lived experience, or they're just a good, out-of-the-box thinker that can help us, rethink the way we've always done things. I encourage us to be thinking about those people as well who might play a role in formulating this next step. And for our September meeting, let's try to decide this point and kind of get some structure around these, and we can share out a breakdown of who's working on what and kind of what the specific focus, kind of long range focus with these groups, and what their immediate initiatives are going to look like. Are there other concerns around sort of where we are as a community? I feel like this is a moment, it really feels like a very important moment around housing in our city. And I said this in my, when I made our annual report to HCD earlier this year, and I think we reiterated it in the message that we sent to the full council before their work session. This is really the moment where, between all of the work that we have done around, the land use study, the anti-displacement study, the coalition in homelessness study, the affordable housing work plan, the cease to harm audit, we probably have more clarity, more knowledge, more kind of wisdom from the community and from data that we have ever had as a community about what we need to do, what the problem is, what's worked in other communities. This is really, it feels like this is a very important moment for action. and the potential to have $20 million in bond funds to help take that action, and just feels like a moment that we can't afford to get wrong. And not to put a whole lot of weight on all of your shoulders, but this really feels like a moment to for folks who care about housing to step boldly into this arena and not shrink away from what is possible here if we take this moment and really seize it. So I appreciate all of you being a part of that and being champions for housing in our community, and it helps me to see this team of people and the capacity that you bring to feel like we can really do this together. So thank you for that. And with that, we'll kind of pivot into any future agenda items. I'm looking at the two things, kind of an event and the date for our meeting. And Sasha, you alluded to this earlier. Some folks may have a conflict with the North Carolina Housing Conference and the date of our next meeting on September 5th. Do we need to think about rescheduling our meeting? Is that are we going to have people who are attending that conference that are key to our next meeting? Jane?
I would vote for rescheduling it. That's also on the heels of Labor Day as well.
Okay. All right, so would that following Thursday work for folks?
September 12th.
September 12th? Can you just, I see Jane putting her thumbs up sign. Can you put your thumbs down sign if that doesn't work for you so that we know that we've got a quorum? Hopefully it's easier to count the no's than the yeses. Okay, Wayne is not around. Other folks who are not available on the 12th. Okay, well let's tentatively say the 12th, and Lynn, I'm sorry to make this happen at a time when you're unavailable, but maybe you and I can connect beforehand, or you can work up through one of the working groups to make sure that your important perspective is available in the meeting. I have tentatively reached out to Land of Sky Regional Council. They've been doing some great work on housing at the regional level and a lot of analysis. So I've reached out to them to come and be our present for that September meeting. And then it sounds like we've got a lot to talk about on that agenda with some an update on that. In how that Nikki was discussing earlier, and then by that point we've got some of these working groups established and some discussion out of that. So should be a great meeting. Probably also nice to have 5 weeks between now and then just to cover all the bases that we've all committed to before that meeting. So any other thoughts, events, reminders, things that we need to be paying attention to?
I know it's on your agenda, the housing forum that's next Friday on the 9th, and it's just $20 for lunch. It's down in Flat Rock this year. The big focus of that forum is going to be anti-displacement. So Tracy Thompson at Land of Sky has worked hard to find speakers who could come talk about that. I'll be there. I know, a lot of our partners are often there. So it's a good event, and it's a good kind of chance to meet people and see people too. And it's like 9 to 3.
Did you send something out on that?
I didn't. It's on the agenda, and on the agenda there's a link, so you can directly register from there.
If there's nothing else, we can move to
public comment?
Chair, we didn't receive any public comments before today, and there's nobody waiting in the queue.
All right, well, if there's no public comments and nothing else from our committee members, I will accept the motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Andy, you froze, but you don't have to do a roll call.
Favor of adjourning, log off the meeting, and we'll call it adjourned.
All right.
Thank
I
you.
have one thing.
Bye.
Thanks.
Really appreciate your work.